Hi everyone, welcome back to our Inside Early Careers video series. Today I am joined by Jonathan White, who is our Head of Consulting, and Denise, who is one of our Senior Associate Instructors. Hi everyone.
Hey, good morning.
Thank you for joining. So today we are going to be talking about the difference between preparing graduates for performance and preparing them for real impact. Denise, what is the difference here?
Thanks, Jess. Well, no question, performance is critically important in terms of me as a new graduate in my role joining an organization. Thinking about performance, what is it that's expected of me in my role? What is considered performing in my role? And the ingredients there are things like skills, my abilities, how results orientated I am, where am I adding value in my role. So performance is really, really important. It's a critical, I would say, foundational starting point. When we start to think about broader career success and broader growth, I think of performance like the ticket to the disco, but it doesn't necessarily get me on the dance floor that is career success. And it's important then that we start to think about aspects such as image and exposure. They start to play a more significant role. What is image? It's my personal brand, it's my credibility with my colleagues, with my peers, with my customers, with my leadership. It's my reputation. They all impact my span of influence, how credible I am, how my ability to influence in that world. So to consciously and really authentically develop my image is, I think, a superpower in terms of broader career success and growth. So that's when we talk about image, we're talking about those things. Exposure, then, if we think about exposure, I'd invite you to think about outside of the core delivery of my role and the people I interact with, what is my exposure outside of that circle? What is my network? What do people know about me? What kind of access do I have to leadership or to different groups or to different teams across my organization? So, although for our graduates, we really start with performance and the skills and the competencies to help them get to that stage one, that foundational performance level, we also really bring in a conscious focus on developing image and exposure in all of our programs.
So you would say that it's performance that gets you in the door, but it's not going to define your long-term impact.
It is important, but it's not the only thing. And I use the analogy of a disco, which maybe shows my age, but performance is my ticket into the disco, but it's not getting me on the dance floor dancing to every dance that I want. There are other aspects. So I really need to be aware of developing my image and consciously developing my image and my reputation and expanding my network and very much, I suppose, proactively pulling the levers and working in that space as well as performance. We're not performance is important, it's just not everything.
Mm-hmm. And then, Jonathan, why do you think then that so many graduate programs are still separating the technical skills and the power skills?
Yes, thanks, Jessica. I think historically, power skills have tended to be covering graduate programs in more of a kind of bolt-on model. So I think it's fair to say at one time the technical training was treated more as the core content, and then skills, such as the communication, the influencing, the critical thinking, maybe the stakeholder management, they were almost added extras. So really, from the outset, in the minds of the learners, you're almost positioning them as secondary skills right from the beginning, which is obviously challenging. I think for me, kind of reflecting back, I think programs probably separated them partly because it's clearer and easier to measure the technical progression piece. You can track certifications, you can track assessments and milestones. All of that feels really tangible. Whereas the power skills are often, they're more nuanced, they're harder to quantify. So I think even though they're often the skills that determine what the real impact is, um, but for me, ultimately, the big problem here is real work isn't split out. On the job, you don't switch from technical mode to the people mode. Your impact comes from really combining both. And Denise touched on this as well. It's turning that good analysis into a decision. It's kind of building trust around that decision. It's getting stakeholders aligned and then navigating all of the complexity and the trade-offs. And all the time you're doing this while quite often under pressure. So that's really where the impact actually happens. It's in that integration point. So from my perspective, the evolution has to be from a bolt-on style model to built in. You're teaching power skills through the technical work, through the real technical work, live problems, real stakeholders, real constraints. Because if we're genuinely preparing graduates for impact, we need to train them the way they'll actually work with those power skills integrated, not separated out.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And Denise, in your experience with traditional graduate programs, have you also seen that the power skills have been seen as secondary or not as important as the technical ones?
Yeah, I think there's a fairly reasonably strong flavor of that in terms of how graduate programs have evolved, and I do deeply understand the why that is the case. I think as we sort of sit and look at it in terms of going forward and effectiveness and impact, I think it's that balance. Um, I've worked with tremendously strong technical individuals with huge technical competence who really carry a lot of frustration around not being heard or
Hmm.
not being able to hold space in a room or put forward a compelling argument. So it can really limit the technical strengths can be limited in terms of impact where the power skills are not given that equal balance. So the word for me is balance. Excellent grad programs connect technical and power skills together and almost weave them together in a way that allow learning and practice and developing the muscles and capabilities so that graduates can not just come up with the best technical decisions, but be actively influencing in the room, be heard, can facilitate complex problem solving. So they're not just relying on the technical skills they themselves hold, but they're connecting with teams and looking to be part of the machine. Because, machines, teams are large, complex machines sometimes. And if I'm only focused on me and my technical skills and not connecting and threading it in with the behaviors, the culture, the impact, the communication, the influence, there's a limiting factor there. So balance and connectivity is important.
Absolutely. And then for programs like ours, Denise, where we weave the two together instead of separating them, what does that look like when those skills are actually embedded?
Yes, what does it look like? That's a really good question. So you take an example of something like developing data analytics and visualization as a core technical skill, an important technical skill, and take that from the skills to do that, to decipher, to crystallize insights, etc., but then bring that forward in our programs to the presentation of that, to challenge sessions, to exploring in the groups and often with the organization's managers, where students have the opportunity to go and demonstrate and show those skills and demonstrate the critical thinking, their confidence, their ability to land a message effectively. One of the biggest challenges, there's so much information out there, right?
Yeah.
And our span of attention is becoming less and less as human beings. So as part of our programs in, for example, data visualization and analytics, part of that involves bringing it to the end of implementation, of communication, of challenge, of embedding the power skills as well as the technical skills. And that takes a little bit more of an investment in the way we design our programs, more rounded in that way. Sometimes our grad students go, but we know how to do it. Why do we have to present it? Because we've learned the skills, and we have to really be saying, well, because this is important, because knowing it does not mean that it will be impactful. and or we work with great clients who come and give their times to hear presentations or project work that the students have done, so that there is almost a profiling, and they're developing their reputation with these leaders before they've even sat in the teams, when they're still in the grad programs, which I think is really powerful as well.
It really is. And then, Jonathan, from an organizational perspective, what changes when you design a program this way instead of the traditional way, would you say?
I think this is such an important point. Ultimately, what changes is the speed and the trajectory of the talent that you're developing. So when you design programs in that integrated way, graduates don't arrive in their role operating in first gear, very technically capable, but really hesitant in conversations, unsure how to influence, the stakeholder management piece, the critical thinking. There's no hesitancy there. They move kind of much faster into third gear. They're contributing, they're challenging constructively, they're building relationships, they're making decisions with confidence much earlier in their careers. Also, from an organizational perspective, I think that has a direct impact on their leadership readiness. So you're not just producing really technically strong individuals, you're building rounded talent who can think commercially, navigate all of the complexity that we've just talked about, bring people with them. And for me, that really kind of shortens that gap between, high potential and ready for responsibility. The other point that I think is really important, it also affects retention. So graduates want to feel effective from the outset. When they can see that their ideas are landing, they have the ability to influence outcomes, that they're trusted in real conversations. From the outset, they start to feel momentum. And for me, that momentum drives engagement. So if someone feels technically trained, but they're under-equipped to operate in the real environment that they're going to be working in, frustration would naturally creep in there. So for me, that's, designing it in this way, integrated, isn't just really a learning preference. It's a very strategic decision for an organization, because ultimately you're building more rounded talent and you're accelerating their leadership capability. You're creating graduates who can be impactful much earlier. And if you get that right, that has the potential to really change the energy right across the organization as a whole.
Absolutely. And on that topic of momentum, I feel like we can't have a conversation about early careers programs nowadays without bringing in AI. So, Denise, in a world where AI is undoubtedly accelerating the technical capabilities at a weekly, daily rate, do you think that this integration of power skills matters more now than ever?
1,000,000%. AI is brilliant. However, AI on its own has quite a lot of limitations, actually. AI without a development and an application of what we're calling these power skills. And I might try and give those power skills they're so critical, and Jonathan may disagree. I would say equally as, if not more important than the technical AI skills, because they really impact how AI is harnessed and applied, and the value actually that is derived from this amazing technological developments and capabilities that are there. So if I start from thinking of something like, effective and precise communication is needed to guide AI tools to produce the best results.
Yeah.
Starting with that in terms of utilizing AI. If we think about critical thinking and analytics, we need professionals to be able to analyze the AI outputs for accuracy and bias to avoid misinformation. And really sort of clinically kind of assess that and thoroughly assess it. Um, AI is bringing great development and beta innovation and huge amounts of change and complexity. So if we think about power skills like resilience and agility and mindset, they're critical to be able to be engaged in the world where AI is actively impacting my role. I'm looking to harness it. We're developing new models. We're tweaking. We're changing. So that sort of resilience and change agility and mindset is a critical power skill to enable people not just to be able to survive in this world, but to thrive, and achieve in this world. So there's so much, the empathy and emotional intelligence. Like, don't get me started. Building trust, managing conflict, understanding team dynamics. AI is never gonna match human capability in that space. Well, certainly not in my lifetime, right? And that is a huge element, a huge ingredient in terms of performance in teams and impact and outcomes and getting outcomes quickly to high quality effectively out there. So those human skills, those power skills that we talk about, the value that they are, getting equal focus in terms of programs, and also then developing those skills for our graduates I think all feel very passionate about.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you both so much. This has been a great conversation. And if anyone would like to learn more about what we're doing in our early careers training, AI training, or any of our other programs, do get in touch on the link below. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.